Welcome back to the Junkyard Dawgcast. I'm Jake Rowe with Dogs 24/7. With me, Kip Adams and Rusty Mansell. Also of Dogs 24/7, we're live on YouTube. Subscribe. Give us a subscription here, guys. Click that subscribe button. Join us every week. We're here 4 times a week, 3 times during the week, once after the game. We're having a lot of fun. We're loving this. Today, we've got Wednesday leans. Where are we leaning on this Georgia-Auburn matchup? We're going to talk. I'm going to pose a question to the guys. A hypothetical, obviously, but it's going to be a fun one. I think Kit might be a little bit nervous about it. He said he was worried about getting exposed on this one. I don't know what that really means, but maybe he'll explain it to us here in just a little bit. And then second half of the show is mailbag, straight up mailbag from the Junkyard over at Dogs 24/7. Hey, listen, if you're not a subscriber already, 2 months for $1. Give us a shot. $1 gets you 2 months, going to get you all the way through the regular season, all the way up until the early signing period. Like, not quite there, but right there in the range. You can decide at that point whether you want to stick around or not. 2 months for $1. Less than 2 cents a day. Come give us a shot. But, guys, listen, it's Wednesday, middle of the week, hump day. Where are you leaning, Rusty, on this Georgia-Auburn game as far as your pick? We're going to make that tomorrow, so you don't have to marinate on this. You don't have long to change your mind if you're going to do it after today. Where are you leaning right now?
A couple things I think that is a little bit different this week is I thought it was a great point where you saying Stetson Bennett, who we anticipate starting right now. First real true road game at Georgia. And second disclaimer, I do not have on lipstick. I'm drinking a energy drink, and it makes me look like I've got on some lipstick. So before I get comments over here from the guys, I do think I still like Georgia's defensive line matchup there. I just against their offensive line, I think our edge guys, if you're talking about Georgia, I think the guys there have a little bit better. It's a tougher matchup for Auburn there. I watched the game last night. Adam Anderson, they brought him all kind of different ways. And what we have seen Georgia do with Adam Anderson, starting a couple years ago with Missouri, where they would basically put him at middle linebacker. And he would act 2 ways, as a spy, and they would bring him just different ways, different pressures. They did that a couple of times against Auburn last year. A couple of sacks he had, a couple of quarterback pressures really gave, Auburn some fits. So, I kind of like that matchup. I think the interesting matchup is Georgia's offensive line against Auburn's defensive line. I think, again, this week it's going to be the tell of the tape kind of. Is Moultrie, the 100%, Owen Pappoe, does he play this week? He makes things different for Auburn in that front seven. So I think if that's kind of the early things, the advantage I like for Georgia again. And kind of the thing, you got to find out, can Georgia establish the run again and kind of offset what Auburn wants to do? Because it's going to be a totally different game plan this week. Derek Mason is going to try to stop the run. He is not going to go with 3 down linemen. They're going to stack the box, and they're going to make Georgia take some shots to beat them.
Well, Rusty, according to the great, to the long time, to the old head Philip Marshall, the man who's been around the block and seen it a million times, TD Moultrie is actually dealing with a compliance issue. I was reading up on Philip this morning. His guess is that TD Moultrie will not be available. A former 5-star prospect who has found a home on the defensive line and has played really well this year. So Auburn could be without them. I think Owen Pappoe is probably going to be a little bit of a game time decision type deal, maybe like he was last week. Did not dress last week against LSU despite making the trip. We'll see if he plays, because you're right. He does make them different. And I think he may be – it's tough. I say this all the time. I said this a bunch of times on the show. Covering running backs and tight ends for linebackers is 95, 99% of the time going to be a mismatch. And Owen Pappoe is one of those guys that gives you the ability to maybe match up there better than most linebackers do. So we'll see if he's actually going to play in this game. I think that one's a big one too. But, Rusty, one of the things that you pointed out, Adam Anderson, one of the things I've seen Georgia do this year with Adam Anderson, seen him do it with Channing Tindall, and I've seen him do it a lot with Nakobe Dean. They turn their linebackers into running backs. They say, hey, stand back here, watch it open up, and go hit it. And that's what they do. And so that's that. You're right. That is a very interesting aspect to this one. And if Georgia's going to do that, they're going to need to hold those edges, keep Bo Nix in the pocket, because he'll make a man miss and run around forever back there. And Georgia's, you can tell Kirby Smart's concerned about that. Georgia fans may not be concerned about it. Georgia fans may be right. Coaches get concerned about stuff all the time that doesn't end up being a big issue for them. But when you place emphasis on it during the week and you get after it and you emphasize it, then you lessen the chances oftentimes of that becoming a problem. But interesting analysis there on the lines of scrimmage, and I couldn't agree with you more. I see this almost as like a like I've said before, I think Georgia's offensive line is the silver bullet in this game for Georgia. If Georgia comes out and runs the football effectively, obviously if it dominates running the football, I think they run right over Auburn. But if Georgia can come out and do it effectively and do it consistently, then I think it's going to be very tough to beat the Bulldogs in this game, road game or not. Kip, where are you leaning on this fine, rainy Wednesday?
I think this is going to be a battle of who can stay ahead of the sticks. I think the goal for both these teams is going to be to get the other team behind the sticks and see what happens there. I think Auburn's going to be very aggressive. I mean, we've seen teams try to attack Georgia's offense in different ways, and each one of them has kind of played into Georgia's game plan for the most part. And I think with Auburn's defense, what they're going to try to do is they're going to be aggressive. They're going to try to get in Stetson Bennett's face, assuming he's the starter, which it looks like he will be, and they're going to try to see if they can get him to make mistakes. I mean, Georgia's obviously going to try to do the same thing and try to contain Bo Nix. Like I said earlier, they've had some experience against some mobile quarterbacks this year, but it's been limited. Like I said, Mike Wright, a limited action. Malik Hornsby for Arkansas, limited action. Vanderbilt and Arkansas quarterbacks who could run. Bo Nix is he might be the best mobile quarterback in the SEC right now, just a guy that can make things happen. We obviously saw one of the best plays of the whole year last week against LSU. Just him, every single time they thought they had him wrapped up, he would just pop out of that and make a play downfield. I don't think we've really had to see Georgia's wide receivers react in that way. If Stetson Bennett's having to kind of get loose in the pocket there and make something happen down the field, how well can Georgia's wideouts, improvise and break off the route and get open for him? That's what Auburn is going to try to do to Georgia. Unlike Rusty, even though Auburn's offensive line has been one of the better units in the country and in the SEC as far as making sure that they're not allowing sacks or tackles in the backfield, they haven't seen Georgia's defense. And I think that when you combine that with Georgia's offensive line playing pretty well, it still gives Georgia the battle as far as that line of scrimmage is concerned. I think it's interesting, Bo Nix, Auburn's quarterbacks in general, they've yet to throw an interception this year. They've thrown more times than Georgia. They've thrown about 30, 40 passes more in Georgia, and they've yet to throw a pick this year. So far the decision-making for Bo Nix has been pretty solid, and TJ Finley. I just don't think that their guys are consistent enough to really move the sticks and sustain drives against Georgia's defense. But as far as just that, the kind of the throw it up and pray type offense, they do have kind of that aspect. And, we've seen South Carolina kind of had a little bit too, where if coverage breaks down on the longer plays, maybe Auburn can have a big play or two. But I think it's really just going to come down to, if Stetson Bennett faces some adversity, if he has guys in his face, what kind of decision-making will he have, in a raucous, Auburn environment at Jordan-Hare? That's kind of the one thing I'm looking at right now. But overall, as far as how it shapes up, Georgia's got a clear advantage on the line of scrimmage, and I think that's going to kind of dictate how this game unfolds.
How is Auburn going to react when a team that has run the ball and has really leaned on it this year a lot of times, how are they going to react if they can't run the ball? And it's tough to say. I don't think anybody would come into this game and think, hey, Auburn's going to run the ball all over Georgia, or Auburn's even going to run the ball consistently against Georgia. Nobody has really done that in almost 3 years for Georgia. So can Auburn do that? If Auburn can't, then how is that offense going to react? And how is that going to affect, like you mentioned, Kip, the turnover battle and, forcing the ball? And if Auburn gets made one-dimensional, then what happens? So I think those are some really interesting questions that are going to have to be asked. And it's probably some interesting questions that Auburn fans are interested to find the answers to at this point in the season, because, you're looking at a team here that, based on how they looked against Georgia State, you don't really think, hey, this is an SEC championship caliber team, but teams get it turned around. We've seen Georgia teams almost lose to Vanderbilt, a bad Vanderbilt team at Vanderbilt, and then come back and be the hottest team in the country. Saw that in 2007. Saw a Georgia team get their brakes beat off by Auburn, a good Auburn team at Auburn near in 2017, get it turned around and make a run in the college football playoff. These things trigger these teams in a good way. And we'll see what that LSU win did for Auburn. And we'll have picks on that coming tomorrow. Rusty, I got a hypothetical for you. Georgia has 3 injured wideouts. And before I get to that, let me do this first. Right now, Stetson Bennett, we're taping this on – we're not taping this. We're live here on Wednesday. And if you're listening to this podcast form, we're taping this on Wednesday. JT Daniels has not gotten very much work the first couple of days this week. He did very little on Monday. He did a little more than very little on Tuesday. Okay, so that's where we're at. That's why we're kind of assuming at this point in the week that Stetson Bennett's going to be the starter. Could that change today? Absolutely. Could change tomorrow as well. But right now, Stetson Bennett is assumed to be the starter by us. So that's that little bit of news in case you were wondering, and we're trying to get it from here. Kirby Smart also said yesterday that Dominic Blaylock, Marcus Rosemy-Jacksaint, and Arian Smith have a chance to come back this week. All right, so he said Marcus Rosemy-Jacksaint is probably the closest. Rusty, if you got those 3 guys, if you could snap your fingers, if you're Georgian, you could snap your fingers and get one of those guys back, which one would you pick?
Oh, well, that's a very good question, Jake. They all bring a little bit different to the table. Based off the amount of reps and what they can do physical, I think Rosemy-St. a guy that, he's such a physical blocker. He's a big body, 200 plus pound guy. You love Arian Smith and you love what he can bring to it. It makes everybody nervous when he's in the game. But right now, I just haven't seen it. He's made a couple of deep balls, but as far as to me looking like a total player, I would go with Rosemy-St. right now. Just because what he can do every single down, and just like in the NFL, I mean, you got to be able to block. I don't care who you are. You got to be able to block on the edge and run routes and, have strong hands, all those things together. So, it's tough just to say one. Dominic Blaylock's a guy that, it's going to take a while to get into football shape once he gets back. I mean, he's kind of been banged up. Then he comes back, pulls a hammy, running around in the knee brace. From what I understand, takes the knee brace off, and he's just got to clear some hurdles. And listen, it's tough to go through what this young man's went through twice, but as far as strong hands, change of direction, polished route runner, when somebody is healthy, Dominic Blaylock is a flat-out player, and he's going to make Georgia better when he's back and he's able to contribute. But if I had to have one right now, I'd go with Marcus, just because I know that what he brings kind of what I would call the total package right now, and he was starting.
Kip, who is your pick?
If I knew that I could pick one guy to be 100%, it'd definitely be Dominic Blaylock, just because I want to see that guy back out there going through what he's had to go through, the injuries so far. And we're kind of seeing it a little bit now with Arian Smith. We saw it with Kearis Jackson, just guys that, seem to go from one injury to the next. And we've already seen Dominic Blaylock go through that. So if I knew I could get a guy back 100%, it definitely would want to be Dominic Blaylock. And also just because his versatility. I mean, you can put him inside, outside, and, they're getting – some good play out of Ladd McConkey right now. You're still trying to get Kearis Jackson back to 100%. But if I knew I had 100% Dominic Blaylock in there with Jermaine Burton and A.D. Mitchell on the outside, that'd make me feel a lot better about rolling into, Jordan Hare Stadium with Stetson Bennett, because Dominic Blaylock is the quarterback's best friend. He's the kind of guy that you can just get him the ball. It doesn't have to be 15, 20 yards down the field. You can get him the ball just, right there at the line of scrimmage, 5 yards, and he can make something happen. He can make guys miss. He also can get separation, within 10 to 15 yards. He's just that clean of a route runner and just knows, how to attack a defensive back. So, I mean, for me, I just think that overall, he's the best overall wide receiver. Right now, the thought of Arian Smith is kind of greater than what we've seen, just because he hadn't been able to get out there and he hadn't been able to really expand his route tree as much. I mean, if he's out there, that once every 2 games, you're going to have a 40, 50-yard catch out of him. And it might be a touchdown, which is, obviously huge, but it's kind of in between that where, he might disappear or he might not be able to really make as big of an impact as the other 2 guys. So I think Marcus Rosemy is obviously the one that's closest to being back, but having Dominic Blaylock out there just makes the offense overall better, and it'll help the return game as well. He's just the guy that helps you in every aspect, offense and special teams. And I think he's the best football player of the group, and a guy that I think that Georgia's offense could really, really use if he's able to get back this year.
And let me correct this. It's Jack Saint. I guess my Kool-Aid is strong enough this morning. So.
You got it right the second time. It was that first time you got it flipped.
I did that yesterday on the radio interview. It's embarrassing. I'm just going to say Marcus Rosemy. I've covered him in high school. We'll add all that in as it goes. So, but hell of a football player, and I think that I think this is a guy that can help Georgia immediately when he comes back.
Yeah, I don't think you go wrong with any of them. So I'm not going to pick. I'm just joking. I am going to pick one. I like the caveat Kip put on there, which is if you take him to full 100%, it's hard to argue with Dominic Blaylock. Especially when you saw what he did last time he was in Jordan-Hare Stadium with a 52-yard touchdown catch. He's just a playmaker. I don't know what he's going to run or what he will run when he's 100% healthy. I know he's not a big guy. I know he's not, going to make 15 people miss and do Peter Warwick type stuff we used to see. I know I'm throwing that one way back there, but, Peter Warwick was, that kind of guy. He's not that, but he's just, like Kip said, he's a good football player. He breaks a tackle. He does some things. But as is, Arian Smith's my guy. And the reason he's my guy is because when you go on the road, you're playing against a team like Auburn. Arian Smith out of that group is the one that's going to make that place, you're going to be able to hear a pin drop outside of Georgia fans. And he's the guy that you throw him in there. Auburn's trying to come up and play the run. You motion him across the formation in the slot, run a slot fade like they did against UAB. And I know Auburn's not UAB. God, I don't want hate mail from Auburn fans for mentioning UAB and Auburn in the same sense, but hey, you almost did lose to Georgia State, so whatever. But, I think that he's the guy, he runs that slot fade, he gets the step, he outruns everybody to the end zone. All of a sudden, that's a quiet place, man. That's a really quiet place. And I like what Rusty had to say about the blocking with Rosemy Jack Saint. Obviously Dominic Blaylock, if he is 100% healthy, is a playmaker, but I just think Arian Smith kind of changes some things for you. And if you don't respect him, if you don't respect the speed there, then you're playing with fire. And then if you do respect it, it kind of opens some things up for some other folks. And I think Georgia may be in a better position to block you on the perimeter right now than they are to maybe light you up down the field. And I think, Arian Smith is a guy that can kind of do that. And, Stetson Bennett has hooked up with him this year against UAB. So there might be a little bit of a rapport there. Let's go to a break. On the other side, we're going to do mailbag questions. Get ready. Let's dig into this mailbag sponsored by Stetson Bennett because he is the mailman. That's what we're told. Munson's broken chair. How many first-team All-SEC players will Georgia have? Will Georgia's defense end up with at the end of this season? Rusty, what you got? Because these are kind of tough. It's hard to count in your head on the fly and figure it out. So just start rattling them off for us.
I'm very confident that Jordan Davis and Nakobe Dean will be first team. Probably Devontae Wyatt. It's just according, it's according if you're talking about writers or coaches. Coaches watch more tape than everybody. Keely Ringo right now is a guy that hasn't been tested a lot. Is he shutting down the field or is he not getting reps because nobody has time to throw? So, Lewis Seen has not had to make a ton of plays because there's not people breaking through the freaking second level on Georgia, so we're going to find out. But as what I've seen so far, Trayvon Walker is a guy that I think coaches will understand what he does and how he impacts the game And with him dropping in coverage, that tip ball he had the day was crazy back in coverage. So I'm fairly confident Jordan Davis, Nakobe Dean, Devontae White would be first team All SEC at a minimum. Now, there's a lot of things can happen between now and then, and Georgia's got a lot of freaking players that's going to be candidates. So there's some big time games down the line, but so far I'd be very confident defensively in those three.
Yeah, I'd just to kind of shorten this up, I think I'd throw Adam Anderson in there as well. I think Adam Anderson's probably going to end up in there because I think Adam's probably going to end up with 11, 12, maybe 13 sacks this year.
Yep.
So, if he ends up at that number, it's going to be hard to leave him off. Who you got, Kip?
Yeah, that's what I was thinking about, Adam Anderson. Then I was trying to see where he is right now in the sacks. I think he's tied for well, technically it's not third, but there's two guys on Florida's defense with 6 sacks, and you kind of got some defensive linemen in there as well. But as far as, if you're counting him at the outside linebacker position, I think he's right in there, in the mix with Blaze Aldridge. And I think Britton Cox has 6. You got J.J. Weaver as well. So I think he's in the mix, and just kind of looking and seeing who Georgia still left to play. I think he's got a chance to, to have double-digit sacks for sure. I think the over-under should probably be set at 3. I think the caveat to that question, I initially read it wrong, is that, SEC first-teamers. I think that Georgia's going to have an abundance of all SEC players on
maybe a dozen.
Yeah, at this rate. But as far as first team is concerned, there's not really a large margin for error there. It's going to be a crowded group in this conference. So I think, like you said, Lewis Cine might not be able to make enough plays. If we're talking about the writers' picks, I mean, they're just going to probably look and see who has the most interceptions in the secondary and kind of go from there. And that might affect him, and maybe help a guy like Chris Smith. He's already got 2. Maybe he ends up with 4 and 5. But as far as first team, I mean, they're just going to go through and look at kind of the names they already know. And I think that might affect some of these guys. It might affect a guy like Devontae White as well, as far as getting a first team nod on the writer's side. But I think 3 is a safe bet, and I think there's easily 3 or 4 guys that could really emerge over the next month or so, because there's going to be a lot of people watching Georgia play in the month of October. So I think that number could easily go up by the time November rolls around.
Hey, as somebody who votes on this, you have to look at stats. So I mean, I don't know what Mississippi State's cornerbacks look like most of the time. I usually kind of cross-reference what I see on a stat sheet with what I saw in person. And if I see a guy have a ball out against Georgia in person, I usually tend to favor that guy a little bit more because that guy's just impressive. So, everybody's kind of got their own philosophy to go, but I don't just like roll down the tackle for loss leaders and go, okay, there's a linebacker, there's a DB, there's a whatever. I don't do that, but there's a cross-reference approach. I try to take it pretty seriously. And, I found myself watching more college football than I ever have before when I became a Heisman voter a couple years ago. And geez, my wife's like, why are you watching this game? And I'm like, hey, I got to vote for the Heisman. Sorry. I got to vote for the Heisman.
Look at that Heisman flex Jake put on.
Yeah, I think that's
when I vote.
That's on my Twitter profile. I'm a Heisman voter, man.
I like it.
I'm a Heisman voter, baby. Man. Now, don't think when I got that vote that I didn't call everybody that I grew up with. Like, I vote for the Heisman now. I was so excited, man. But yeah, I mean, I use it as an excuse to watch football, not
exactly. That's big time.
It's your duty. By the way,
I don't have that excuse.
By the way, App State plays Louisiana next Tuesday. That Tuesday and Wednesday night starts. So
yeah,
you make a little baseball, a little college football, and you got
don't really know who I'm watching, but I need to be aware.
That's right.
I might find the Heisman winner in that game. Okay, Ooper Dog. I'll be honest, I don't know who Ooper Dog is. I'm sorry if you've posted on the board. Maybe it's Hooper Dog. It's probably Hooper
maybe
Dog.
that's a cutoff.
Hooper Dog, probably.
Yes, Hooper Dog. We do know you, Hooper Dog.
Hooper.
Question.
JT Daniels doesn't get healthy, doesn't start the second half of the games this season. Will he come back next year? Listen, I don't know. It's a weak quarterback class. I think if he was going out in last year's quarterback class, probably very good chance. This year's quarterback class, I really don't know. And the thing about it is, and I almost know where Rusty's going to go with this, and I hate to head him off at the pass because we talk about this all the time whenever we talk about guys going pro. All it takes is getting a couple, 2 or 3 good evaluations, and you feel good about yourself, and you're going to take your chances. Bet on yourself. And you have to factor the injuries into this too. This cuts both ways, all right? What happens if he deals with an ankle next year? Well, then he's out of time, basically. Maybe not quite out of time. I think he's got a COVID year. So everything goes into the pot there. I think there's a better chance now than there was to start the season. But with this quarterback class, for the time being as weak as it is, I mean, if I'm advising JT Daniels, I'm saying take it to the wire because at this point, I don't know. This is one of the weaker quarterback classes I can ever remember as far as the 2022 NFL draft.
And I speak to a lot of people. I always am fascinated about who goes and who doesn't. Obviously, there were some guys from Georgia that made a decision a couple of years ago to go that probably wasn't the best decision on those guys. And Kirby Smart revamped his entire evaluation deal. When those guys left, Holyfield, Isaac Naughton, all those guys that probably should have came back for another year. What Kirby Smart did was he came in at the end of the summer and everybody did an NFL combine. And you knew exactly where you were, 40-wise, height and weight. It didn't matter what an agent was telling you. It didn't matter what a cousin was telling you. It didn't matter what your best friend was telling you. You knew what you ran, what and how. You got a benchmark of how you were going to test right before the season started. And that's been a really good thing for Georgia players, I think, to know where you are and kind of where you project, as opposed to somebody telling you something in December and then it not come to it happen in May next year when you think you run a 4.5, but you wind up running a 4.81 and it don't help you any. So saying all of that, there's two sides of this. At quarterback, it's a little bit different. Now, here's kind of the way the NFL has changed. It's about getting to the second contract now. It's just like the NBA. The structure now, if you're not a first rounder and you're not even a second rounder, if you say, you know what, I'm going to the NFL and I'm going to get into this contract first and I'm going to bet on myself to get to that second contract. And when you start hearing those terms, I bet on myself, those kids are gone. And I have not heard that from JT Daniels, but I know the thinking of why some kids leave. And Solomon Kinley was one of those guys. You know what I mean? He was one of those guys, I believe. Some of those guys like that left and they were third rounders. So you look at, and still he's starting now, so he's closer to getting to his second contract. So the one thing I'll tell you about this is with JT Daniels, it's an extremely thin quarterback class, just like you said, Jake. Now, if JT Daniels says, you know what, I'm going to take this offseason and get myself healthy, I'm okay being a third or fourth rounder because I'm going to bet on myself. He's gone. But all of those evaluations and all those things will be done after the season, how this one plays out. The only thing I would say that would lean me a little bit toward JT probably leaving would be it's a thin class, man. It's an extremely thin quarterback class in this upcoming group. Now, there'll be some guys pop up between now and then, but we knew last year the 4 or 5 guys that were going to be first rounders right now, and didn't really know that Mac Jones is going to get that high until he played the season he did. So it's just about getting that second contract. You're going to have the information in front of you, but quarterback, just like high school quarterback recruiting, it's different. Those NFL quarterback evaluations and where you project is different. And are you going to say I'm betting on myself and I'm going no matter what? Those questions will be answered later.
Yeah, and that Mac Jones example could be a reason why JT might actually decide to come back, because if he comes back and puts up a monster season, then he may work himself into the first half, first round, top 10 pick, top 5 pick, whatever. Kip, what's your take on this one?
I think if he doesn't come back and get himself some more starts to get NFL teams more film to watch and to show that he can stay healthy, I think even with this quarterback class, you can't really put him in that top 5 or 6 guys. I think you got Desmond Ridder, you got Sam Howell, Spencer Rattler, Matt Corral, Malik Willis. It's going to be tough to crack that group, even with a good workout in the spring. So I think you're looking, you're down there with the Carson Strongs, the Jaden Daniels, Tanner McKee, kind of that group. And I mean, again, they got more film to put out there. So I think right now, if you're JT, you've got 7 games of film in the last 2 years. You probably want to get the double digits. You want to be able to give scouts 10 games to kind of look over. So yeah, I mean, if he doesn't come back and start, then this injury was, lingering or something else popped up. So something's kind of happened. So I think his stock's going to take an even bigger hit. So, I mean, Rusty's right. You just want to get to the league and have a chance to impress guys in camp and have more time to stay healthy. But if you're JT, you're a guy that, has a chance to be maybe fringe first round, second round if he's healthy and, he's able to put some good film out there and play some important games for Georgia in the second half of the season. That right there is very valuable for NFL scouts. I mean, Georgia's got the type of offense and they've got the opponents on deck to where you can really, really showcase yourself to NFL scouts. So I think that if we're looking back on this season and JT Daniels didn't play, I think there's a bigger opportunity for him as far as draft stock to come back next year. It's still a personal decision. I mean, if he him and his family, his circle don't care about where he's drafted, they just want to, to take that next chapter, then that's what they're going to do. But I think it's pretty obvious as far as draft stock, if he's not playing the second half this year, then it makes sense for him to come back if that's important to him.
All right, we need to go quick here through the next through the dog for the Dogs 24/7 Junkyard folks here so that we can get to some of these YouTube questions. So I'm going to answer these next 2 real fast, and then we're going to get to the third one before we move on. Break Dog, how does the quarterback room play out next year if JT comes back? JT's the starter if he's healthy. It's going to be hard to knock him off. He's played too much football. I think that'll happen if Stetson comes back. Then Stetson will probably be the backup, and then you're looking at hitting the reset button the following year. Maybe you'll be in 2023. You'll be what you thought you were going to be in 2022. Miller 1624 says, do you see Channing Tindall coming back for one more year? That one's tough because Channing Tindall's a guy that's on the rise. And if he continues his current trajectory, he gains very little from coming back, as much as Georgia fans would love to see him go. But I also think Georgia's in incredible hands at inside linebacker. Tresman Marshall, get Ryan Davis healthy, Smile Munden, Jamon Dumas-Johnson. I think Jamon Dumas-Johnson and Smile Munden get a chance to kind of announce themselves to the country. To be honest with you, I don't know that there's not a better chance of maybe Nakobe Dean coming back than Channing Tindall coming back, because Channing Tindall is ideal size, fit for that position. Nakobe Dean, obviously I'm not saying academics are not important to Channing Tindall. Nakobe Dean's an engineering major. He's made it no secret that he is there to get an education. He's a 4.0 student. And I think that Nakobe Dean would fit the bill of the type of Georgia player they've got to come back for their senior year in the past, because I just don't necessarily see him as a first round or second round or top 50 guy just because of size alone. We'll see how that goes, but that's the knock I would have on him. Hube 1086, what's up, Hube? We know you, man. For the Auburn game, and guys, let's do this one real quick. For the Auburn game, leading rusher, leading receiver. All right, over under. This is a lot of questions, Hube. You can't be doing this no more, man. Leading rusher, leading receiver, over under 250 yards passing, over under 2 passing touchdowns.
Are we putting his bet in?
This is 8 questions in one.
Are we trying to put his bet in for him?
We're making this man's parlay.
Oh, right? My goodness.
Over under 2 WTF. That means what the throws from Stetson Bennett. And then over under 1 defense.
Oh, my man, Hugh.
Hey, Hugh, you're going to have to let me know, dude. Shoot me a DM and let me know where in the world have you found a place to bet over under WTF throws from a quarterback. I want to bet at that place.
Listen, parlay on one game.
Listen, if y'all can slide through this thing and do the same thing I'm about to do, I would really appreciate it. Leading rusher, I'm going to go Zamir White. Just think that's a good bet. He gets the most carries in most games, so I think that's going to be him. Leading receiver, I'm going to say A.D. Mitchell. I think A.D. Mitchell has a good game against the Tigers, over under 250 yards passing. I'm going to go under. I think Georgia will be over 200, under 250, over under 2 passing touchdowns. I'm going to say under. I think Georgia has 1 and maybe 2 or 3 rushing. Over under bad throws from Stetson. We'll just go ahead and call it that. Over 2. I'm going to say push, he gets away with one, and he doesn't get away with another. And then over under 1 defensive special teams touchdown. I'm going to say under. I don't think Georgia gets one. Rusty, just go down the line and
I agree. I'll take everything you got there, but I'll disagree. I'll go Brock Bowers. I think he gets back into the game plan this week. I think it's a guy that they're going to do a lot of. There's going to be a lot of second level because there's going to be a lot of things. I think play action type thing out of Stetson Bennett and Scrant. I watched him last night against Auburn last year. He had a couple of balls scrambling on them, rolling out, and he didn't have Brock Bowers last year. So I would agree with everything you just said. Right on, and I'll take Bowers as the difference. I like Zamir White as well.
Kip, where you at? What you got?
Let's see. I'm going to go James Cook. He's going to have 4 runs, but one of them is going to be like a 40, 50-yarder that kind of gets him at the head of the group there. I like Brock Bowers as the leading receiver, kind of helping Stetson out. Like I said, they're going to try to attack him. He's going to have to try to improvise a little bit, and I think Brock's kind of that guy that's going to win those 50-50 battles no matter where he's at in the field. I saw it in my one practice viewing of the last 2 years, as you mentioned in the last pod. I saw him do it in about perfect coverage, against one of the best safeties in the conference. I'm going to go over on the passing yards. I think that it's going to be kind of a volume passing game for Stetson Bennett here. I'm actually going to go push on 2 passing touchdowns. I'm going to go over on those bad Stetson throws, but I agree with Jake. I think only one of them is probably going to cost Georgia with a potential turnover. I think one of them is going to be one of those where he kind of just look and go, why'd you do that? But he gets away with it. And, I will actually go I'm going to go under on defense and special teams touchdowns. Those are just a little, those are tough and rare to call. Obviously, Georgia's done it more often than most on defense, but special teams haven't really hit that one yet. And it's tough to really predict that's going to happen on any given Saturday because it's just so random out there. So they did
hit one last week.
Yeah.
All right, let's get into these mailbag questions and the ones from our faithful YouTube listeners. Luke Johnson, does Big O, that's Darnell Washington, if you've been living under a rock in Georgia circles. I have lost that question all of a sudden, but it was, will Big O have a touchdown? Will have a reception this week? I'm going to go with, yeah, I think he gets there. I think they get him involved in play action, and they work off of what they did last week, which they put him in there, and they just mauled people in the run game. I think they get it to him in play action this week. Rusty, what you got on that one?
Yeah, I think he gets some targets. He actually played a little bit more than I thought last week. I thought it'd be 1 or 2 plays, and I don't know how many he got, 5 or 6, but he was pretty physical dude. He'll be important this week, but I was told he had a real good practice on Monday, and I think he'll get multiple targets.
Yeah, I think we're looking at Darnell Washington being 100%, maybe, definitely by Florida, definitely after that bye week, and still, playing himself into a little game shape. Kip, what are you saying? Reception or no for Darnell Washington?
Yeah, I think he gets 2. I think he gets a couple of receptions. He looked pretty good out there in a little bit of practice we saw. I don't think he's there yet as far as being as fluid as you want, but I mean, if you got a 6'7" guy that's able to catch passes, then you want to give him the opportunity to catch passes, and I think that's a guy that can really help Stetson out if he's going to have to, toss a couple up and hope for the best. Definitely, Darnell's the guy that can make it happen as good as anybody. You can't really defend that. No matter, you could have perfect coverage and you're not 6'7".
Darnell Washington, St. Jack. I'm going to start throwing St. Jack on the end of everybody's name on Georgia's team.
St. Jack.
Bennett, the 4th St. Jack. All right, next question. What would you say the strength of this Auburn team is right now? And, I don't think this Auburn team is bad at anything. Like that's to me, that in and of itself is a little bit of a strength. Through 5 games, I don't really see a consistent, oh my God, they're terrible here. But I would say the strength is the running backs. I mean, I think Jarquez Hunter and Tank Bigsby, if he's completely healthy, those are some really good football players. And I've been really impressed with Jarquez Hunter this year. I think he's a good football player and a guy that Georgia's going to have to deal with for a little while. And Mike Bobo has shown that he knows how to use them. I would say running backs. Rusty, what do you got on Auburn?
Absolutely. I mean, that freshman can go. He's got some bounce to him. He's hard to tackle. Everybody knows, obviously, with Tank Bigsby. who he is. I think it's Auburn's running game. We all covered Mike Bobo long enough to know that Mike Bobo wants to run the football and to try to set up other things. So, you look at Auburn, and maybe this isn't the best matchup against Georgia to try to run the ball, but you look at them, he asked what the strength of their team is right now, and that's the strength of their team. I don't think I've seen better Auburn teams out on the edge, especially the playmakers or wide receivers. But I think right now, the strength of their team is this running game.
Yep. Kip, what you got?
Yeah, it's interesting because the LSU game, I mean, Tank Bigsby was kind of a non-factor in that game, and yet they're still able to to run for well over 100 yards. I think they had 163 rushing yards in that game. So for me, it's not just Tank Bigsby. It's the fact that they have a dynamic quarterback as well. I think it's just, you look at so far this year in the SEC, and we've gotten some separation so far that we think at the top, but the quarterback play has not been very consistent or strong. But if you have the good Bo Nix on the field, he's one of the most talented quarterbacks in the conference, and he showed it in that game. I mean, what he did against LSU at the quarterback position, I mean, you can play what you think is perfect defense, and he can still make some plays. Now, is he going to be able to do that against Georgia consistently? I have my doubts, but as far as what's impressed me, just the fact that they thought they were they were getting towards making a change at quarterback. They started rotating guys in, and not only did Bo Nix, kind of give up or get frustrated, he just went to work and practice, kept his head down, focused on what the task at hand, and when his name was called, he came in there and not only gave them stability, he gave them stellar elite quarterback play. And so, that's kind of what's special about Auburn right now. Again, it's about Bo Nix being able to do it consistently. And if he can, if the light goes on, they are a team that you do not want to play. They're a team that the other teams in the conference will fear. Now, as LSU, they're not playing good football this year. So we have to kind of take that into context as well. The defense hasn't really been, what we thought they would be at all. They're not playing disciplined at all, and they actually are allowing things to break down in a lot of plays against him. But they had him in the backfield multiple times. He broke free. So that's just something that's a special trait, and we're always watching the quarterback position. So I think if you have a quarterback who can run, it just opens things up for everybody else. And I love Jarquez Hunter. I think he was I don't know if it was powerlifting champion, but I know weightlifting was in that background as well. And so he's a guy that, again, if you're taking snaps away from Tank Bigsby, you're pretty talented, and he showed some big time, breakaway speed and power in that game. So I think that's something Auburn's been missing the last couple of years, is just a featured running game. They didn't know what they had. They tried so many guys back there, and it really set them back offensively. And now it looks like they got a couple guys they can depend on. They have a quarterback who can run the ball as well. So it just gives them a lot of weapons back there to make things happen when maybe they're that wide receiver group, which, isn't the strongest in the conference. They're not able to make something happen. I think that those other guys can make something happen for them when they need them to.
All right, let's do one more. Curtis Maximus 123, and I want to do this too. Thomas Newman was the last question, by the way. Thomas, I want to give you a shout out since we used your question for sure. Curtis Maximus 123, defensive MVP of the season. I think this is a two-man battle right now. This is Jordan Davis or Nakobe Dean, and I'm going to continue to disrespect big fellas in the defensive line, and I'm going to go Nakobe Dean just because he's doing so much, and I know he does a lot of it because of what Jordan Davis does, but Nakobe Dean is just making so many stinking plays right now, and there's this emotional leadership thing there with him right now that is almost – I don't think Nakobe Dean's as good as Roquan Smith. I don't think very many people in the entire world are at the college football game, but I think Nakobe Dean's doing some Roquan-esque type stuff for Georgia this season. Rusty, what you got?
I love it. You watch those two plays against Arkansas, and those two running backs tried to square Nakobe Dean up, and he had no part of it. First of all, he rips through the center, and then the running back's there to take him on, and man, it wasn't even close. He bulldogged him for a better term and just sacked the quarterback. chases people down sideline to sideline. I will say, one of our guys here, Jordan Harris, mentions Jalen Carter. That would be number 2 for me, because right now, and people ask me all the time about Jordan Davis is a freak show, unbelievable football player, but he comes out on third down. That's okay. That's okay. You got to get a big man out. Jalen Carter is a 3-down defensive tackle, freak show athlete as well, who, oh, by the way, can block at fullback, collision. You have to separate these things. I mean, there's dividers among these players. It doesn't mean I'm knocking on Jordan Davis, but Jalen Carter, defensive line, he might be the highest draft pick of all those guys right now when it's all said and done in 2 years. But I'll go with you right now. Nakobe Dean's my guy as MVP so far.
And Jalen Carter's doing something every game to get himself something or to give it to somebody else. I mean, he's creating something for himself or something for somebody else in every game. I just think Jordan Davis is there's that ripple effect with him being on the field. And he is playing some third down more than he ever has.
Yeah. I mean,
defensive MVP. Oh, sorry, Russell. What you got?
I'm with you. I mean, people are like, man, I'm not ripping on Jordan Davis. But, I mean, Jordan Davis makes everybody around him better because he requires so much attention. And, man, that's a large human walking pregame on sidelines.
Kip, who you got?
I mean, if Jordan Davis was playing, 30 – if he was playing 30 snaps a game, I don't think it'd be close. I mean, they can't – if they can get him out there, well, one, they haven't needed him. I mean, obviously, he played 6-9 snaps against Vanderbilt. They haven't needed him that much. So he might be the MVP toward the end of the year if they need him in some big games. If there's some close games, yeah, nobody else has a Jordan Davis. But, I mean, it has to be Nakobe Dean. You look at what they're doing on the defensive line, whether it's Adam Anderson, whether it's, Nolan Smith, Devontae Wyatt, Jalen Carter. I mean, Jalen Carter's out there making plays on offense. Blocking 3 guys at once, that definitely gets you on the highlight reel, and it did. But Nakobe Dean's making sure they're all in the right position and the right play before the snap too. I mean, he's making sure he's setting everyone on that defense up for success. And I think just what he does before the ball snapped, and then making sure that they, that everyone's lined up correctly, communicating to everyone, and then making so many plays himself. It's tough to really argue with what he's been able to do. I mean, he's also approaching double-digit quarterback hurries, and Georgia tracks that stat. Adam Anderson leads the team with 10. I think Jalen Carter's got 9. Devontae Wyatt's got 8. And Kobe's got 9 as well, with those 4 tackles for loss. So he's making plays. He's helping everybody else make plays. He's the leader and, the heart and soul of that defense. I thought College Game Day did a pretty good feature on him and the guys, the defense before the game last week, just how much he means to that defense. You could look, you see Nolan Smith, you see Adam Anderson, the other guys in that room. It's pretty clear that they all respect and really they know what they have in Nakobe Dean being in the middle of that defense and how much it means to all of them. So, I mean, he's the leader of the most talented defense in the country. It's hard not to have him as the MVP, and I think Georgia's had some pretty special inside linebacker play, and we obviously know the guy that set the bar there in Roquan Smith, and it's really, really tough to kind of match that. But Kobe Dean, he's had that season so far. I think he's got a couple, big-time plays left in him, and I think he's going to, I don't know about award season, but as far as Georgia's awards at the, halfway point of the season, I think everyone on the team will kind of agree that he's kind of been the guy that stirred the drink so far. As
Tony Schiavone would say, we are desperately out of time. All right, this is one of the longest podcasts we've done in a while, longest live shows we've done in a while. I got to write something today, guys, or I'm going to get fired. So I got to go got to get it on the word processor. I want to make one note here, though, guys, and I think this may change the way I pick this game. Georgia sent Payne Walker, long snapper, up to talk to us on Monday. They're sending their other long snapper, William Mote, up to talk to us on Wednesday. Georgia by 50. They're sending the long snappers up. Kirby's playing chess, not checkers, 3D chess. It's over. Auburn doesn't have a chance. Obviously, that's very facetious there, but it's just funny. Big game weeks like this, rivalry weeks, the interview list is about as bad as it could possibly get, and Kirby's throwing us long snappers. I wonder how many people out there know who William Mote is. Yeah, so that's where we're at. But hey, guys, we had a great time. We'll be back with you tomorrow for picks. But for this episode of the Junkyard Dawgcast, I'm Jake Rowe with Dogs 24/7. Kip Adams and Rusty Mansell from the same place. And as always, take it easy.